On the night of May 2026, Iran did the unthinkable. In its most provocative attack yet, Tehran launched over 180 Shahed-type kamikaze drones and 12 ballistic missiles directly at the United Arab Emirates, targeting critical energy and military infrastructure in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. At least 7 drones breached defenses and slammed into facilities at the Baraka nuclear power plant, the first recorded attack on the external electrical infrastructure of an operational civilian nuclear facility in the region. This wasn't a warning. This was Iran crossing every red line, deliberately striking the heart of Gulf energy security while ceasefire talks were supposedly underway. The Middle East just entered a far more dangerous phase. To understand how dangerous last night's events truly were, we need to look closely at how Iran carried out this attack. At 2:17 local time on the 21st of May 2026, waves of Shahed-136 and Shahed-238 kamikaze drones crossed into UAE airspace from western Iraq. The assault was launched using Iranian proxy forces operating from Iraqi territory, a deliberate attempt by Tehran to maintain plausible deniability while still delivering a direct blow. 3 drones were specifically targeted at the Baraka nuclear power plant, the UAE's most important energy facility that supplies approximately 25% of the country's total electricity. UAE air defenses responded heroically, intercepting 173 drones and 9 ballistic missiles. However, the sheer volume of the swarm overwhelmed parts of the system. 7 drones successfully penetrated the defenses. 3 struck backup generators outside the inner perimeter of Baraka, causing significant fires and forcing the plant onto emergency backup power. 2 hit fuel depots at Jebel Ali port, triggering massive blazes that burned for hours. Another 2 struck aircraft hangars at Al Dhafra Air Base. This was not a limited or symbolic strike. It was a large-scale, coordinated swarm attack, one of the biggest single drone operations of the entire conflict, designed to saturate UAE air defenses and hit high-value civilian energy infrastructure. By using proxies in Iraq, Iran tried to hide its fingerprints while still sending a clear message of escalation, just as ceasefire talks were gaining momentum. This follows a clear and disturbing pattern. Iran has repeatedly used proxy forces across the region to strike Gulf targets while attempting to avoid full-scale retaliation. But targeting the electrical infrastructure of an operational nuclear power plant crosses multiple red lines simultaneously. It is an extremely reckless escalation that risks a catastrophic regional response. The human reality behind these explosions is sobering. Families in Abu Dhabi and Dubai woke up to the sound of air defenses and distant detonations. Workers at power plants and oil facilities risked their lives to contain fires and maintain operations. Millions of people across the Gulf now face the very real threat that their power supply, hospitals, and daily life could be disrupted by political games played hundreds of kilometers away. Iran's leadership is gambling with the lives and livelihoods of their own people and millions worldwide who depend on stable energy prices. By attacking civilian energy infrastructure, they have pushed the region closer to a much wider and more destructive conflict. Last night was not just an attack on the UAE. It was a direct challenge to the entire regional order. The Iranian attack on the Baraka nuclear power plant did not go unanswered. Within hours of the first explosions on May 21st, the United States launched a powerful and precise retaliatory operation. F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters from Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, supported by F-22 Raptors operating from undisclosed locations, conducted immediate strikes on Iranian launch sites in western Iraq and coastal missile batteries near Bandar Abbas. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group launched over 40 precision-guided strikes, targeting command centers, drone storage facilities, and missile launchers that had been used in the assault. The response was swift, overwhelming, and carefully calibrated. American forces focused on military targets while deliberately avoiding civilian areas, sending a clear message: attacks on Gulf civilian infrastructure and nuclear facilities will not be tolerated. This marked a major shift in U.S. policy, moving from containment and deterrence to direct, proportional retaliation. Saudi Arabia and the UAE responded in full coordination. Joint defense protocols were activated immediately. Emirati and Saudi forces began counter-drone operations using Turkish Bayraktar Akinci UAVs, which had already proven effective in earlier engagements. The integration of Turkish drones with American intelligence and Gulf air defenses created a rapid and lethal response network that neutralized several follow-up Iranian drone attempts before they could reach their targets. This coordinated action demonstrated something new in the region, a unified Gulf front backed by overwhelming American power. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are no longer relying solely on U.S. protection. They are actively participating in their own defense, sharing real-time intelligence and conducting joint operations. The speed and effectiveness of this response sent a powerful signal to Tehran. What Iran hoped would be a shocking provocation to force negotiations has instead unified its opponents and triggered a stronger, more coordinated military backlash. But beyond the strategy and firepower, there is a deeply human dimension. These retaliatory strikes aim to protect civilian populations in the Gulf from further Iranian aggression. Families in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and across the region have lived for too long under the constant fear of sudden missile or drone attacks. Every Iranian launch site destroyed and every drone swarm intercepted reduces that daily terror and helps restore a fragile sense of security for millions of people who simply want to live their lives without the shadow of war hanging over them. The message from Washington and the Gulf capitals is now unmistakable. The era of unchecked Iranian provocations is coming to an end. The immediate aftermath of Iran's attack on May 21st reveals the true cost of Tehran's reckless gamble. Iranian losses were severe. U.S. and coalition strikes destroyed or heavily damaged at least 14 launch sites in western Iraq and along the Iranian coast, including 3 major command centers that coordinated the drone and missile assault. Coastal radar networks near Bandar Abbas suffered significant damage, severely limiting Iran's ability to monitor the strait in real time. Several key storage facilities for Shahed drones were also hit, reducing Tehran's immediate capacity to launch further large-scale swarm attacks. On the UAE side, the damage was serious but contained. At the Baraka nuclear power plant, 3 drones struck backup generators outside the inner perimeter, causing temporary power disruptions that affected approximately 25% of the UAE's national electricity for several hours. Emergency systems prevented any radiological leak, but the psychological impact was enormous. This was the first time in the entire conflict that Iran directly targeted the electrical infrastructure of an operational civilian nuclear facility. At Jebel Ali port, 2 drones hit fuel depots, triggering massive fires that caused an estimated $1.2 billion in immediate losses and disrupted operations for days. This attack was a major escalation. By deliberately targeting civilian energy infrastructure, Iran crossed multiple red lines at once. What was intended as a show of strength and a way to pressure the Gulf has instead backfired dramatically. The strike has unified the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf states like never before, triggering a powerful and coordinated U.S. response that has further isolated Tehran on the international stage. The Iranian people are once again paying the heaviest price. Already struggling under heavy sanctions and economic hardship, they now face the prospect of even harsher international isolation and possible new rounds of punishing strikes. The regime's reckless actions are deepening the country's economic and diplomatic crisis, widening the gap between the leadership and a population exhausted by years of confrontation and suffering. The contrast is stark. While Iranian leaders celebrate what they call resistance, ordinary Iranians wake up to higher prices, greater uncertainty, and a future that grows darker with every provocative move. The attack on Baraka has not strengthened Iran's position. It has accelerated its strategic isolation and exposed the high cost of its aggressive foreign policy. This was not a victory for Tehran. It was a self-inflicted wound with consequences that are only beginning to unfold. The Iranian attack on the Baraka nuclear power plant has triggered a historic strategic realignment across the Middle East. In the days following May 21st, the UAE and Saudi Arabia have dramatically accelerated their bypass infrastructure and defense cooperation. The UAE is fast-tracking the second Habshan-Fujairah pipeline, aiming to boost secure export capacity to the Gulf of Oman to 3.6 million barrels per day by late 2027. Saudi Arabia is expanding the Petroline to a full 7 million barrels per day and pushing forward its $26.6 billion land bridge railway project to connect Jeddah directly to Dammam, completely bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, Gulf states are deepening military ties with Turkey. The UAE has integrated Al-Tariq precision-guided bombs onto Bayraktar Akinci heavy attack drones. Saudi Arabia has purchased multiple Korkut anti-drone systems and advanced laser weapons. Kuwait, Qatar, and even Iraq are acquiring Turkish Hisar air defense batteries and Akinci UAVs to create layered protection around critical energy infrastructure. This is a major strategic shift. The Gulf states are no longer passive. They are actively building an independent energy and security architecture that makes Iran's Hormuz strategy increasingly irrelevant. The combination of new bypass routes and modern defense systems is reducing Tehran's leverage and giving the Gulf greater strategic independence. China has quietly urged Iran to de-escalate due to its own energy security concerns. Beijing, which imports over 40% of its crude oil from the Middle East, is deeply worried about further disruptions. Russia, while still providing limited support, is limited in its ability to fully back Tehran amid its own challenges. The attack has accelerated the creation of a stronger anti-Iran coalition. The Gulf is no longer just defending itself, it is actively building an alternative security and energy architecture that sidelines Iran's traditional tools of influence. Iran's Ring of Fire proxy strategy and its control over Hormuz are both eroding rapidly. But beyond the geopolitics, there is a deeply human dimension. These bypass routes and defense investments are ultimately about protecting stability. Secure energy flows mean more predictable oil prices, which directly affect the cost of gasoline, food, transportation, and heating for millions of families across Asia, Europe, and beyond. By reducing dependence on the volatile Strait of Hormuz, the Gulf states are helping prevent sudden economic shocks that hit the poorest households the hardest. The Gulf is no longer passive. It is actively rewriting the rules with steel, technology, and strategic foresight. And Iran is watching its once powerful geographic advantage slip away. After the dramatic events of May 21st, the strategic reality in the Middle East has become painfully clear. Iran's latest provocation, the direct attack on the Baraka nuclear power plant, has pushed the region to the brink of a much larger confrontation. By deliberately targeting civilian energy infrastructure, Tehran has crossed multiple red lines and unified its opponents in a way not seen in years. The United States and Gulf states are now in a position of clear military and strategic superiority, with overwhelming naval presence, advanced air assets, and accelerating bypass infrastructure that increasingly sidelines Iran's traditional leverage. The coming days will be decisive. Iran must choose between a painful but survivable diplomatic retreat or risk a far more destructive round of escalation. The window for a face-saving compromise is narrowing rapidly. With its naval capabilities severely degraded, its financial lifelines in Dubai cut off, and its proxy networks under strain, Tehran is running out of good options. This attack on Baraka may prove to be a historic miscalculation. Instead of strengthening its negotiating position, Iran has unified the Gulf states, triggered a powerful U.S. response, and accelerated the creation of a stronger anti-Iran coalition. The regime that once projected power through fear and asymmetric threats is now facing the consequences of its own aggression. Its ability to hold the global economy hostage through the Strait of Hormuz is rapidly eroding. At its heart, this crisis is about people. It is about whether leaders can find the wisdom to step back from the brink so that millions of families in Iran, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and far beyond can live without the constant shadow of war, sanctions, economic despair, and environmental catastrophe. True strength lies not in reckless confrontation, but in choosing peace and stability that allows ordinary citizens to build better futures for their children. The next few days will test whether Iran's leadership recognizes this reality or chooses a path that could bring even greater suffering to its own people and the entire region. The balance of power has shifted decisively. The era when Iran could weaponize the Strait of Hormuz with impunity appears to be coming to an end. The world is watching. The stakes could not be higher. Tell me in the comments, do you believe Iran's latest provocation will lead to a major U.S. Gulf response, or can diplomacy still prevent wider war? If you think this attack on the Baraka nuclear plant was a serious miscalculation by Tehran, comment the number 9. This is Maya. Thank you for watching. I will bring you further verified updates as this dangerous situation continues to unfold.